So She-Hulk came out on Friday. The first episode, they let us screen the first 4 episodes. They let press screen the first 4 episodes of the show. I'm going to go spoiler-free on it. This is another one I don't feel like I need a script for on this one, because this is really the first one of the Marvel shows in probably pretty much since Hawkeye. Yeah, and even really more so than that one, refreshingly just kind of feels like just a superhero show, which is a lot of fun. I know that now it's a whole thing to be apparently people have turned around on the Marvel movie things having jokes in them, which is, I guess, now a huge flaw for movies to have a sense of humor about themselves. God forbid the movies about the guys who fight crime in pajamas and based on funny books for children take any kind of joke about it, but fine, whatever. I'm sure Christopher Nolan will come running back to the genre anytime now, and we can all stop having fun again. But unlike a lot of the other shows, which I've all enjoyed to one extent or another, there have been weak spots, there have been not weak spots, but I think this has been a pretty good run of things. But it's not existential like WandaVision, it's not trying to be a geopolitical thing like Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's not bug nuts crazy like Moon Knight, or so far, at least in the first 4 that I've seen, it's an episodic comedy action show, not really straining for like a deeper cultural connection thing like Miss Marvel was. You know, it's basically a half-hour action comedy show with a Marvel budget, Marvel TV budget anyway, which is sort of what's fun about it, and why it feels kind of freewheeling, and why it's the sort of thing where there really can't be that much more to review about it unless you're gonna start talking about continuity Easter egg stuff, which at this point people really should have figured out is just kind of part of the joke of all of these, that the continuity stuff and the world building and the lore really only matters as much as the most recent thing decides it does. Like, yes, there's, especially once episode 2 gets rolling around, there's a lot of stuff that starts building up. People who are into Marvel Easter eggs about stuff that's upcoming watch for scenes where they start scrolling through news reports or newspapers. There's at least 2 things in there in particular that'll make you go, oh good, I'm glad that someone finally addressed that thing that no one's brought up for a while. That was kind of a big loose end. And another thing that's going to make people go, oh shit, they're finally going to start talking about that. Cool. You know, and also in the case of this one, this is a comedy show about a lawyer who is a lawyer for superhero stuff. And the joke of the show, of course, if you've seen the trailers, part of this is the character constantly talking about, no, this isn't a Marvel show with cameos constantly, and it's not all about the cameos, it's my show, and it's a lawyer show, not a Marvel superhero continuity show. And of course, the actual joke of the show is, she may want it to be that, no, it's a Marvel continuity show with a bunch of superhero stuff constantly intruding on the lawyer show, no matter how much she may want that to be the case, much like the She-Hulk comic books that this was based on. And much like that, there are also fourth wall breaks, where the main character turns around, acknowledges the camera, and jokes about the fact that, yes, this is a Marvel show, isn't this ridiculous, what's going on? Which, given the fact that it's a female main character and a show that seems to be winking towards specifically a female audience, is going to draw inevitable comparisons to Fleabag, but this is something that they did in the She-Hulk comic books, and acknowledging the audience, making fun of the medium. I'm not sure it tracks exactly as clever here as it did in the... Like, I was really glad that the fourth wall breaks showed up, and as they go on, they get more useful. They're a little awkward in the first one, in the first episode, because they're sort of joking about the fact of being in here. And I understand this is an underdog character, sort of. You're playing up the underdog stature of the show. The original She-Hulk comic books, part of the joke of having her acknowledge the audience and play up the foolish nature of it was that the She-Hulk comic was a book that was not really in heavy circulation. They constantly thought it was going to be canceled. Going self-aware and meta with it was a way to really boost the sales and be different and interesting, and John Byrne really took that to an interesting, better known book at the time. I'm not sure that this is something that they're also going to have to deal with when Deadpool gets in there. I'm not really sure that you can do meta self-parody to that degree and positioning yourself as a goofy, scrappy little underdog show when you're part of the biggest entertainment thing that has ever existed in the history of entertainment at this point. Like, it all kind of comes off as a humble brag. Like, tee-hee, look at us being small and silly. You're not small and silly. You're hundreds of millions of dollars worth of CGI. So I'm not sure that those jokes 1,000% carry off. The good news is those are small amounts of the jokes, and the rest of it is more humor in the vein of a good lawyer comedy with superhero bullshit in it. And that's kind of what I paid, or didn't pay, because I'm a critic, so these are all write-offs for me. The one perk of this stupid, ridiculous job of mine. To plot stuff, I presume anyone who's going to watch this is more or less aware of the premise of or not, you know, these is mainstream entertainment at this point. Speaking of jokes that don't work anymore. The next one will script. So the premise here is that this is the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner, played by Mark Ruffalo's cousin. She's played by Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black. They have a car accident. Some of his blood, because he's the Hulk, gets onto her. She has an open wound from the car accident. This causes her to get the same Hulk powers as him. He attempts to train her in, hey, here's what you have to do to, deal with the fact that you're going to be a Hulk now. So when you get mad, you turn into a Hulk, only to discover that it doesn't work the same way for her. And this is something that people have immediately decided they have an issue with about the show, because they're doing the same setup as in the comics, where She-Hulk works differently than regular Hulk. She does not have an alternate persona. She keeps her same, like Bruce Banner would turn into the Hulk was a separate person than him. She just gets bigger and green and keeps the same personality, and she can change back and forth at will. She can just do it. In the comics, they went back and forth as to why this happened. The real reason was just basically that it had to be different, and they needed the She-Hulk to be drawn prettier than the Hulk, so that was the way it was. But in the show, they have gone with the later interpretations of this, after John Byrne rewrote the concept of She-Hulk, and after Peter David rewrote the concept of Bruce Banner's Hulk, where it's all about trauma response and buried psychology, and that he had an abusive childhood, and that the Hulk is a pre-existing alternate persona, that kind of thing. And a lot of people have taken issue with this exchange of dialogue that's in the midst of the episode that I'm just going to describe, because I'm not sure if the clip is actually online that we can just cut in here. Where the Hulk is attempting to explain to She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters is her character's name, that controlling the transformation for him was always about having to really exercise serious control over his anger issues, and her response is that, well, women just do that all the time because they're, like him, described in the first Avengers movie, always angry, so that's not something she has to learn how to do. And it's a cheesy line of dialogue for a show that's really attempting to be cheesy. I'm not sure how you do a show that is called She-Hulk Attorney at Law and not be cheesy on purpose. Comic books are cheesy on purpose. A lot of them are cheesy on purpose. Go back and read 1960s Marvel. The Fantastic Four would answer their own fan mail in the comics and make jokes about fans asking to meet the Thing's Aunt Petunia. Joking about the premise is innate to these characters. Knowing that they're ridiculous is part of what set the Marvel Comics apart from the distinguished competition. And the first episode, outside of some awkward parts, again, I'm not 1,000% sure that the fourth wall breaks really kick into a working form until towards the end of the second episode, where you start to get a sense of, oh, okay, this is where the premise is working. Because the first one, which is the only one that's aired so far, so the premise of the rest of the show has not really kicked in until the second episode, where it's oh, okay, these are going to be our regular characters, this is the premise, this is what she's going to be doing, this is our conflict. Oh, and also, by the way, here's where things are going to be going with Bruce. I won't spoil exactly how, but it looks like there's a lot more regular Hulk content coming in addition to She-Hulk, so that's interesting. Which is another thing that people seem to have been missing, and people being pissed off about this exchange between the two characters. It's a really interesting character beat between the two of them. Clearly not just about the fact that she's a woman and women deal with anger better than men. She deals with it better, but also this is a new thing for Bruce because, again, I'm not going to, go into too much spoilers. This is not the only Hulk-type character that's in this show. So the real meat of this reveal about the anger and when you can change and when you cannot change and dealing with it, it's less about men and women stuff, and it's more about the fact of Bruce Banner, the Hulk, realizing that all of this work he's done on himself about all of this stuff that he shows her, he's literally written a book about how Hulks work. And as it turns out, the whole thing about Hulk split into two personalities and one is always angry, that's not a Hulk problem, that's a Bruce problem. And that's not something he had considered, and it's clearly bothering him. The idea that we are not done with Bruce the angry Hulk maybe still being a problem is a complication. Cool. It's probably not a complication for this show. This is a show about She-Hulk, and week to week dealing with guest stars. There's been, in the 4 episodes that have been shown, people have seen the previews, Wong is a guest star, The Abomination is a guest star. Clearly there's more coming down. Again, not going to give them away. But what's been shown here, I had a lot of fun with. Tatiana Maslany is doing heavy lifting of whatever works and doesn't work about this series. She's great. And of the stuff that works and doesn't work, the CGI is what it is. They clearly have made a decision that whether or not the She-Hulk, which is a big CGI character, can look 100% real all the time, the most important thing is having Tatiana Maslany's dialogue match up to her facial expressions and those always being present, and it's the correct decision. I'll take a slightly cartoony looking She-Hulk sometimes if the trade-off to that is that this actress is always getting to act. I think that's more important than having the textures there. It's a lot of fun. It's very Adam West Batman. I love Adam West Batman. I think that there should be more things like that. It's a goofy, silly, campy comedy show, just like right out, making no apologies for itself. Maybe it turns into something else. Towards the back half, it goes another direction. I am totally fine with it just being what is, just being a funny show about this stuff, because some of it just is funny. It looks like Frogman is going to be a character in this show. You can't do Frogman and not have it be funny. And I'd rather have him be there and be funny than not be there, because that's cool. Again, it's not a complete run of the show, so I feel like it's not appropriate to do a star rating right up front. It would probably be a 7 out of 10 up front right now, but I have a feeling it'll probably go stronger as it goes ahead. I could be wrong, but recommended right now. Had a lot of fun with it. Check it out. See you next time.